Well, hello everyone, and welcome to 17 Minutes of Science. This is our 10th show, and I want to thank everyone for tuning in and inspiring us to continue these conversations with interesting people doing important research and service, which must continue during this time. My name is Zahra Cheesman. I am a technical solutions scientist at In Vivo Biosystems, and today we have a very special show about clinical testing for the SARS-CoV-2 coronavirus entitled Stepping Up: How Kashi Labs has Responded to COVID-19. My guest is Dr. Zahra Kashi, the founder and CEO of Kashi Labs, which is headquartered in Portland, Oregon. Dr. Kashi is a board-certified molecular immunohematologist with many years of experience in clinical labs, biologics, pharmaceuticals. Kashi Labs is a CLIA-accredited laboratory, which stands for Clinical Laboratory Improvement Amendments, an acronym you may have heard more than once lately because of all the intense focus on the need for CLIA labs to increase human sample testing to detect the presence of this virus. So Kashi Labs has stepped up to help meet this need in order to increase testing capacity in Oregon and beyond. So Zahra, thank you so much for taking 17 minutes out of what we know is a very busy time for you to check in and talk to us. And so can you go ahead and give a quick 30-second snapshot about you?
Certainly. Thank you very much. And well, I am Zahra Kashi. I was really, I went to school here in Oregon Health Sciences University to become a laboratorian back in 1988, 89. Then I continued my education into clinical laboratory science, in particular with focus on immunohematology, and was a laboratory technician for a long time. I worked and I went to grad school. I taught, I directed laboratories, and I finally founded the Kashi Labs in 2006. And that, in a nutshell, laboratory has been my life. So.
Well, thank goodness for that, because we need you now. So what was the focus of Kashi Labs prior to the COVID-19 pandemic?
We have been, so our laboratory has been mainly focused on transplantation immunology. We are a genomic lab that performs human sequencing of the genome and comparing that between donors and recipients for bone marrow transplantation. That has been a main focus of the lab. We also do pre-transplant and post-transplant monitoring to ensure a successful graft that is being transplanted, be in kidney, heart, or bone marrow, as well as medication monitoring, listed and illicit drug monitoring, as well as genotyping for the health and well-being of humans. So that has been prior to COVID. That was the focus of the laboratory predominantly.
Wow. And so now, how have things changed for you in the lab?
Well, you know, like everybody else, Sarah, significant change. You know, we were called into action both ethically and, of course, by colleagues and by the government. And, you know, it's one of those things. You just, step in and you do what humanly you can do. So within a short period of time, we went live with COVID-19 testing. We had all the equipment, the expertise, the knowledge, and so, what was there not to do, if you will. And since then, it has become a significant priority because of the nature of this and the pandemic. So we are prioritizing every patient's safety and work based on we have been doing all along prior to COVID testing, and strategically moved things around and added automation and specified staff members assigned to certain tasks in order to handle what we have been doing and also to offer testing so there would not be a hiatus, if you will, of what the role we want to play and for the patient safety of all, so not just COVID patients, but everybody.
And how quickly were you able to stand up that function? I mean, you mentioned you had the talent, you have the instrumentation and all of those competencies, but there's no doubt some things you needed to change. How quickly could you do that?
We were very, thank you for asking, Sarah. And there's a group of technicians and technologists here who literally rolled up their sleeves by, we converted our, we wanted a BSL lab, BSL2 lab to be separate for safety purposes as well as, again, for the fact that we didn't want to interfere with our routine work and allowing the space not to be crowded by additional work. So we converted our conference room on a separate level of our building and our storage area. So believe it or not, my gratitude goes to the group here. We were shoulder by shoulder, side by side, everybody rolled up their sleeves into the night, weekends, and we just from removing the carpet on the floor to redoing, because we couldn't get anybody to do the work for us. There was no contractor available. So we actually became a jack of all trades overnight, if you will, to getting the hood moved all the way to reflooring, all the way to just establishing a lab. This whole thing, if you're a laboratorian, certainly you can appreciate how much work went into it, but needless to say, we were up and around within 2 weeks, about 10 days actually, a little under 2 weeks, but this was constant 10 solid days in a row. So this is an opportunity to thank my very dedicated group of people here who work at the lab. They're not only laboratorians, now we know they can do everything beyond and above when the duty calls.
That is pretty inspiring to think that you did that in such short order. And not only did you roll up your sleeves, but you rolled up your carpet. I like that part of the story. Did you have a sense when this pandemic, it became evident what this was going to be and how the world would be affected? Did you feel early on that Kashi Labs was going to get involved with this, or how did that come to be?
Quite frankly, no, because, much like the earlier SARS, like MERS, like some of the, like Zika virus, there are so many things that during the course of my profession, at least, I have seen they come and go. So initially, like the rest of the world, this was, my thought were, oh, well, this would be also, just coming and going, and there will be laboratories and the state health labs and will be sufficient for the purpose until, luckily early on, we were, when I was approached by the colleagues, in fact, in vivo biosystem and in viral tech were the ones who really just shared the alarming nature of what's going on and asked if we would just step forward and together we'll make something happen. And so, no, I didn't really envision that. I thought like everything else was going to just be transient and not clinging on as long as it has. I'm glad
that's
that
interesting.
forward.
Well, we're all the better for it that you have acted so quickly. And we keep hearing that testing isn't as widely available as it should or needs to be. I know that keeps changing week by week, especially as we move toward these phased reopenings. But in your view, what is the main bottleneck there? Is it availability of the tests or places to go get a test or reagents or all of the above?
Yeah, for the most part, it's a multifaceted, Sarah. At least this is in my last 10, 11 weeks of literally being immersed in this. And then I will tell you that on the average, at least 12, 13 hours of my day, every day has been focused on this, not only the testing and ensuring that, the availability of the testing, but also, studying it, staring at it, and learning about it more and more, and also being challenged by it. I've learned more and more that this is, yet there is no question that without laboratory tests, it's a guessing game. There is no way. And it's almost like you want to win a lottery ticket, but, you got to buy it in order to win it. So there is no question that the laboratory is the foundation of everything. But the challenges, indeed, there are some that are from safety zone and who are not willing to bring this to their laboratory. There are some whose expertise isn't there, and it's a very, it does take some time to ramp up. There are some, but then there are many laboratories who have done wonderfully to come on board, and some of them, to my knowledge, have more capacity than work. But what is the added problem here is the lack of reagent, the lack of collection devices, being a nasopharyngeal swab, or being a saliva collection device, or you name it. The laboratory reagents, is another thing. It's just that the chain of the supply chain has been amazing. That at every step of the way something is back ordered, it becomes a domino effect, and so it just is a culmination of, it's a perfect storm situation. The laboratories and laboratorians. I know that we are on the spot, and everybody in the universe is watching and looking, but frankly, more power to all of my colleagues. The labs are doing what they can to the best of their abilities, but it's a combination of many things, unfortunately. Many back. And of course, to top it off, if a laboratory gets inundated by a lot of samples, then the problem becomes the throughput. So unless if you have, all the systematic automation in place, handling thousands of samples a day is really not an easy thing to do. As we have, we hear, there's the public hears, oh, it's just a 5-minute test. This is not correct at all. This is not a 5-minute test. If it is, then you're looking at a 48% false positive, as we all have heard lately in the news. So
sure, the trade-off between speed versus accuracy. In fact, we had a question come in on the chat about what is the turnaround time for the test that you're offering, and also as something that popped up when I saw that and you mentioned it, are you processing both saliva samples as well as the nasopharyngeal?
Yes, we are. We started off, and I'll answer both of your questions. We started off with nasopharyngeal swab as well as nasopharyngeal lavage and saline. Both of them were CDC-approved matrices. We validated them, significant validation, initial work by a significant amount of contriving the virus and whatnot. Submitted our emergency authorization use to FDA, followed everything basically by the rules of FDA. And then, of course, we begin seeing the shortages of swab, the nasopharyngeal lavage. There is no shortage of that, but it's for some of our elderly population, it's a more difficult matrix to, especially if they're bedridden, to collect. So when saliva became an option, we were very, very quick to proceed with proper validation of saliva and paired sample analysis and running, and we are offering both. Our turnaround time at this time is 24 hours from the time that we receive the specimen to the time that the results become available to the practitioner or whoever is the patient population is no later than the next business day.
Wow, and that must be so critical as we move toward opening our state and needing to have increased testing and the contact tracing piece of this, that you have the information quick enough if action needs to be taken.
Absolutely, yes. Otherwise, if the laboratory test is not available within an extremely quick time, within a day, to me, it defeats the objective of being tested, But if you're going to take 4 days, 5 days, the patient, either recovers or, something awful happens. So, yeah, time is of essence.
Yeah, we've seen that all over the country, no doubt. Do you feel that that we in Oregon are ready to ramp up testing now that people are beginning to move, and we don't quite know what's coming, but we need to be prepared?
To my knowledge, there have been a number of, laboratories within Oregon who have gone live. A lot of them are hospital-based. I get that. Our laboratory here in Portland, Oregon, we are certainly available, and we've implemented a significant amount of validation of automated systems that would enable us to respond. So I think we are. I believe we are ready. There is no question that depending on where this takes us, the state can be, or each state in the United States can be even more ready and ramp up even more solidly until, if God willing, the vaccine becomes an available item for everybody.
Right. We need all of it. We want it all. Which leads me, in our last minute, I wanted to ask you just kind of a fun thought experiment, that if you had a magic wand and you could wave your magic wand and make a test in any capacity, what that might look like. I know we had a fun thinking about this when we met last week. I'd love you to just share your thoughts on that in our last minute.
Yes, certainly. I shared with you jokingly that I would pick up my phone is my first encounter when I open my eyes in the morning, and call Siri or Alexa or whoever and say, hey, check me out. but I think that something of the nature of a breathtaking, kind of breathing into something that very quickly determines, by a change of color, something that everybody can do in the privacy of their own home would be my magic wand. If somebody could just blow in some, a tube or something, and it changes color and tells you, green is okay, you can go, and red is stop, and you get it. Obviously have to be repeated, but that would be a screen. If that ever comes up, would be ideal.
That would be, there goes our timer. That was minute on the dot. That would be ideal. Maybe even if you could blow onto your phone.
Exactly.
To riff on your first idea. Well, Zahra, I really want to thank you so much for talking today. And I wanted to share with our listeners that Zahra mentioned to me that 17 is a favorite and lucky number of hers. So hopefully we delivered for you today on our 17 minutes. And appreciate you taking the time to talk with us about what you're doing, and wishing you all the best and to be well, continuing in the work you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Likewise.